I'm investigative journalist and proud vegan Jane Velez Mitchell, and we are talking about how to save the world. People from all around the world are watching this broadcast, not just on the internet, but on satellite television. More than 14 satellites downloading this around the globe. So you in the audience and you at home, we are changing the world today. We have had amazing discussions so far, and it continues. Now we have a panel about spirituality and diet, and those two things are very, very linked. If you're talking about spirituality, but you're eating fast food and you're eating burgers, something is wrong. We're going to talk about why all life is sacred. And of course, we are, as always, delighted to have with us Supreme Master Ching, the woman who is responsible for this message being spread around the world. Thank you once again, Supreme Master.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Highness.
We also have an amazing panel, and I'm very, very delighted to be able to meet in person Lionel Friedberg, who is the Emmy Award-winning producer and director of A Sacred Duty, which is an amazing documentary about the horrors of animal agriculture, and really, horror is the word. If any of you have ever seen this documentary, it really exposes the toxic secrets and the underbelly of this industry. Also delighted to have somebody who I'm a big admirer of, Dr. Elliot Katz, who is the president of In Defense of Animals, an organization that does so much for animals and really spreads the word about a host of problems involving the animal community, whether it's factory farming, testing on animals, across the board. And finally, once again, we have Dr. Will Tuttle, who is the best-selling author of the amazing book, The World Peace Diet, Eating for Spiritual Health and Social Harmony. As I mentioned, Supreme Master Ching is joining us on an international web and satellite hookup, and we are very much delighted to have Supreme Master participating in this panel discussion.
Thank you, Jay. Lionel, in your opinion, what is the role of religious organizations and their part in overcoming today's dire crisis?
Well, clearly there are many facets and aspects to this whole business of global warming and climate change. And one of the most overlooked, I think, certainly in the media and in the mainstream media we're talking about here, is the matter of ethics and morals. Asking yourself the question, is there anything morally wrong with what we're doing to our world, to our planet, to the species with whom we share it? It really comes down to that. And the fact is that when you go beyond the political arguments and the scientific questions and the engineering aspects and so on and so forth, you really have to get into the profound moral side of global warming if we're going to touch the hearts of people and make people ponder on this on the deepest level. You know, ethics are what drives so much of what we do, and our moral fiber is what lies at the heart of so much of our decision making. If we don't exercise the right decisions in that aspect, what's going to happen? We might get more gas mileage out of an engine, but if we let the polar bears go extinct, what's the point of that? I think we have failed in our mission, and what we'll be left with is a morally bereft and depleted world. And I don't think any of us really want that. So religion, I think, plays a very large role in addressing these issues. I made a film called The Sacred Duty, which was produced for an organization called Jewish Vegetarians of North America. They underwrote the film, JVNA for short. And it dealt with all the aspects that we've been discussing here today, from the agricultural side, from the scientific side, from global warming, carbon dioxide, you name it, everything. But at the end of the movie, we addressed in no uncertain terms that really what it comes down to is what are we doing to those beings with whom we share this world with? And we're treating them pretty awfully. It pulled no punches in showing that. It turned a lot of people away from the film because they didn't want to know about this. They didn't want to deal with that sequence. And so I had to put a menu up front at the beginning of the DVD to allow people to jump over that segment if they wanted to. I didn't want to do that, but I was made to do that because people say, oh, I can't show this to kids and I can't show this to my mom-in-law and whatever else. But we have to start thinking about it on that level. You know, we had hoped that with this movie, which was made by a Jewish organization, but it addresses universal issues. It doesn't specifically address Jewish questions. It was made by a Jewish organization, but it looks at, well, what does the Bible have to say? What do the great books of the Bible have to say? The 5 books of Moses. It incorporated texts and quotations from that in order to touch people, because a lot of people go to synagogues and temples and churches and mosques and whatever else, and this resonates with them. And so the film had this religious theme running through it, in the hope that we would, reach a very large audience, not only in the Bible Belt, but everywhere. And what we had hoped was that established religion, be it Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or Judaism or Rosicrucianism or whatever, would eventually get together and come to a common platform and start addressing the issues of climate change, of global warming, and of our relationship to ourselves because of the health issues involved, and to the animals that we are abusing so horrifically in labs and on factory farms and slaughterhouses. I don't have to go into details. You all know what goes on. But we didn't reach enough people in the religious community. The religious community has, unfortunately, been very reticent to get together and to address these issues on a common platform. And I still, to this day, am wondering what that may all be about, why there is such apathy. I do think that in about 100 years, or maybe less from now, we'll be able to look back on this era and wonder how we allowed the Amazon rainforest to go up in smoke, how we allowed the great apes of Africa and Asia to become extinct. How did we allow the coral reefs to appear? Didn't we know what was going on? Didn't those who occupy the platforms, the religious platform, realize what was going on and speak out loudly about it? I shudder to think about what our grandchildren will say to us one day when they say to us, well, didn't you know? But of course, we do know. And I think this is a fundamental issue that should be addressed by the religious community. They are not at this point taking up the cudgels and looking at these issues. And I think we need to break through that barrier. We all know what goes on today. If you look recently at the meat recall here in Chino in California, where 143 million pounds of meat was called back from the school system and supermarkets purely because downed cows, these are cows that are too lame or ill to walk at slaughterhouses, were being brutalized, and therefore their meat was regarded as contaminated. And all this meat was pulled back. So it's not that we don't know what's going on anymore. We do. And I fail to see why we have not been able to break through this barrier of apathy. This is a question I would like to ask Supreme Master later on. Maybe she has some insight into that. It's not that we're dumb or we're not informed. We've been to the moon and back, and we've got little robotic explorers out there at the edge of the solar system. So we have the intelligence to make these moral choices and question these issues, and we're not doing it. So, with all due respect, on behalf of my co-producer of this film, Richard Schwartz, who is the president of Jewish Vegetarians of North America, I would like to use this platform today and issue a challenge to the religious community worldwide through the platform of Supreme Master Television to come together and to start thinking about these issues and to become a little more vociferous about them, a little more vocal. Bring it into the mainstream of religious thinking. Because if we're going to curb global warming and stop some of the horrors that are going on and making ourselves sick, we really need to bring it to the place where a lot of people go, and that is the pulpit. And so, with all due respect, I issue that challenge today. And I'd like to end with a question then to Supreme Master, and that is there any way that we can break through this apathy that is preventing people from taking up this issue and converting to a vegetarian diet when the facts are clear as a bell? We all have access to it now.
Yes. Hello, Mr. Freeberg. Thanks for the honor. I thank you, first of all, for being so concerned. And you are right. I think the religious people and leaders should speak up about this subject, should be taking more of the leading position to help the public understand the great problem that we're facing and the solution to curb the global warming. But it's not going to be that easy or overnight. But I think right now, maybe we can just offer them, the public, the vegetarian diet. Even if the religious leader doesn't help us to give a hand in this, we can go all out and spread the news through internet, through flyers, through media, through television, and through word of mouth. We can offer them all the information that is very up to date now about the climate change and the solution. And right now the only solution, the best, the fastest, and the most effective is the vegetarian diet. That is the major solution to global warming, as per scientific evidences even. I'm not even talking about the moral obligation and the karmic retribution from meat diet. But if we give enough information to the public at large, and if they care enough to forego animal food to save the world, then their heart will have been enlarged enough to be more compassionate toward other species. And then they will understand gradually, naturally also, due to their kind living standard, that to love others is to love themselves. It will be more automatic mental attitude after the majority of the whole planet population turn to vegetarian diet. Now, once we have saved the world, we will have more time to help them to understand in a deeper level about compassion toward animals. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supreme Master Ching Hai and Mr. Freeberg, for sharing with us. Dr. Katz, could you please share with us your thoughts on how compassionate living drives your own life purpose?
All right. If I could start off, I'd like to read 2 or 3 statements from people who've genius, sensitivity, have motivated me and whose footsteps I've tried to follow. And for my organization, that's the driving force for In Defense of Animals. The first one is a statement by St. Francis of Assisi. It's not to hurt our humble brethren is our first duty to them, but to stop there is not enough. We have a higher mission to be of service to them wherever they require it. The second one is by George Bernard Shaw. The worst sin towards our fellow creatures is not to hate them, but to be indifferent to them. That's the essence of inhumanity. This statement tends to get hidden from the public. There's been art shows around the genius of Leonardo da Vinci. His artwork is fantastic, thinking futuristically of things he's created. He stated, "The time will come when men such as I will look upon the murder of animals as they now look upon the murder of men." And the statement that brings it full circle is a statement by Albert Einstein, who makes it all seem so very relative. Our task must be to free ourselves by winding our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. And that's the statement that ties together now the concern for the well-being of the planet as well as the well-being of the species that inhabit it. Us, the human species, being part of a web of life. And the statement that I'll finish with is by Émile Zola. And he states, "The fate of animals is of greater importance to me than the fear of appearing ridiculous." And that's the reason I'm here today. Take that chance. Several years ago, our organization, this is our 25th year for In Defense of Animals since I founded it. My background is as a veterinarian, so I've ministered and cared for and done everything to save lives of animals all my adult life. And the organization has been successful, very successful. We've got some groundbreaking victories. But several years ago, I realized that I was only spinning my wheels or doing Band-Aid cures that to stop cruelty and so forth, that unless the paradigm changed, the way we perceive as a species, other species, that it's time that we stop seeing them as resources, seeing them as just commodities, objects, property of things. And as long as that is the main paradigm, that we will always continue to exploit them and harm them and abuse them and not think in terms of them as compassion. And the question was raised before, why doesn't religion do more? Religion, to a great extent, has been the major factor why animals are considered down here and we are considered way up there. And that's because religions, many of them don't believe that animals have souls and we have souls, and therefore, why should we care about these beings that have no souls? And that goes back to the days of Thomas Aquinas and so forth in Western society, to looking at that and saying, why care? The man who came up with what goes on in laboratories, vivisection, Descartes. In his day, they tortured animals experimenting on them because they believed that the screaming of a dog was no different than the ticking of a clock. That animal was simply a mechanical being, no soul, no sensitivity, no intelligence. Well, we've learned differently over the years thanks to people like Jane Goodall. But these are the factors that keep the major separation. And this goes out. So several years back, I started a campaign to change the concept and the paradigm and started promoting the use of the term guardian. So for people who have animal companions, probably maybe some of you have heard already, do your best never to think of yourself as the owner of your animal companion, but as their guardian, their protector. And Mayor Prank of West Hollywood, several years back, they were about the third or fourth city in the United States that changed the term owner in their ordinance to the term guardian. And other cities include St. Louis, Missouri, Bloomington, Indiana, San Jose, San Francisco, Woodstock, New York, Amherst, Massachusetts, state of Rhode Island. And we're hoping soon to have Beverly Hills to have it happen. We're working on that. So this is critically important. Action follows language. Concepts, what one does, the way one thinks. So as long as people like ourselves don't take the lead and don't think of animals as more than resources, property, commodity, and things, we will just be spinning our wheels. But I would like to say that because of this climate catastrophe, it has brought together people. Up until now, there has been a giant divide between animal protection, animal rights, and environmentalism and concern for the environment. And now, because of this audience is made up perhaps of people who hadn't given that much thought to the suffering of animals, maybe a little bit, but really haven't put their minds into what goes on in the factory farms and the millions of animals that are killed in the most hideous ways. As a veterinarian, I've witnessed it. Or who were raised in the most hideous ways. But now, because our earth is involved, we have another, in quotes, stake in it, spelled the other way. And on some levels, I'm pleased that this is bringing this together. I have a question to ask you, and that is your thoughts on how to change the paradigm to get people to realize that we are but one species among many, and to give much more consideration to the other species that we share the planet with. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You see, you have very good suggestions through your question that we should really change the attitude towards our animal co-inhabitants. Yes. But this will take a little time and a lot of public informing activities in order to change everyone's attitude. Every one of us can contribute our part, whatever way we can, to change the public opinions. I wrote 3 books, The Dogs in My Life, The Birds in My Life, and The Noble Wives, in the hope that I can give as much information as possible to as many readers as possible, so that they understand and accept the fact that our magical animal kingdom has a lot to offer, and has a lot in common with us. In fact, some of them are more endowed than us humans. And I have suggested to use the word our co-inhabitants in the Supreme Master TV in referring to our co-inhabitants, animals. And some people already use caretakers, a guardian, a human companion, etc., etc., instead of pet owners. It's a good sign, and I hope this trend will be more common in the future. But even if they say, okay, I'm the owner of the dog, it's just a term to refer to his companion. But if he treats the dogs well, humanly, compassionately, and lovely, then it doesn't matter. We also don't mind. As long as people mentality have to change, they have to look upon our animal co-inhabitants with all due respect and understanding. The best would be that they can communicate with the animals. But you see, at least if we have domestic animals, we should love and respect them as family members and give them names and comforts and the way we would like to be treated. My books also to let people know that we can really communicate with animals just like the way we can communicate with our family members or friends. Therefore, I even suggest with the Supreme Master Television to list all the animals' psychics, the animals' communicators on the television website and the television screen. People can refer to it and really can test it out. They can call any of these animals, communicators or psychics, and talk to them about their animals' feeling and wants and habits. You can test them even. Suppose these animal psychics never know where you live and never know what your dogs look like even. You just give them the name of your dog. And then he will tell, the animal communicators, or you call it psychics, can immediately tell you the intimate details about your dog. Then you know that he really knows. And then you can ask them further question about what your dogs want, and is there any question from the dog's part or anything that the dogs request from the companion, the human caretaker. So nowadays, there's no excuse anymore to treat animals the way the majority of us used to do. So it is good that we have a television and good that we list all these communicators. And it's a little good of me to write these books to inform people about what I know about animals through my communication and interaction with them, internally as well as externally. I think everybody should begin to realize that animals really have soul, and they're just like us. They're just like us. They're just different shape. Different shape, just like different flowers. Some big, some small flowers, they're all flowers. And living beings, some big, some small, some 2 legs, some 2 wings, they're all living beings like us. Thank you, sir, for bringing this up and giving me a chance to explain a little. God bless you.
Thank you.
I've had the great pleasure of reading Supreme Master's books about animals, and they really are beautiful and spiritual, and they're international bestsellers, which is always a good thing because she, again, is spreading the word about the relationship between people and animals around the world. And of course, this is really all about evolution. When we become incapable of killing a pig or killing a dog, essentially, we're going to be incapable of murdering each other and waging war.
That's
so
right.
How do we evolve to that next level?
All right, love. Well, we just have to do it one step at a time. Actually, global warming is a tragedy. But in a way, it has a little positive effect in that people are united together to fight global warming. That's number one. And number two, people are getting more awareness about our co-inhabitants and how we should treat them. So I think that's already half of the next level.
Absolutely.
And the next we will go further and further, yeah, as we work along.
Dr. Tuttle, would you like to weigh on the evolution aspect of this spirituality crisis?
Yes. What I've discovered in my research into this for a long time is that all of us have been born into a culture that has an underlying hidden core that it is taboo for us to discuss. And it's taboo for us to discuss it as a culture because we, at a deep level, feel a lot of remorse and grief over the massive amount of routine brutality that we mete out towards animals for food routinely every day in this culture, for food and also for entertainment and for research. And so it's taboo to talk about this, and I think that's one of the main reasons this conference is so valuable, is that we're actually talking about what is taboo. And there's always this sense in talking about a taboo subject, there's just sort of this quality of, oh no, don't talk about it. But there's also an aspect of, oh wow, this is powerful to talk about, you know, and it's the very hidden shadow at the core of our culture, I believe. And what this core is fundamentally is a mentality of reductionism that we're taught from the time basically we leave our mother's womb and come into this world, and we begin to start eating the foods that we're forced to eat in this culture. After we lose our mother's breast, we're given the flesh and secretions of animals that have been brutalized. And so we're taught from an early age to reduce beings to things, to mere commodities. So it's a mentality of commodification of life. It's a mentality of reductionism. It's also a mentality of exclusion, because we learn early on to exclude certain beings from the sphere of our compassion. And when we do that, we're automatically able to commit violence towards them because we say something like, well, they just were put here for us to use, or they don't have a soul. And every institution in our culture cooperates in basically ritually injecting this mentality into each and every one of us from the time we're born. The institution of our family, the institution of religion, the institution of education, the institution of the media, government, law, every institution in any culture all work together to basically let that culture reproduce itself, whatever that culture is, whether it's destructive and violent, or whether it's very, wise and benevolent. The institutions in that culture naturally work that way. And so what I realized is that we've all been basically forced into participating in daily rituals of violence that are based on reductionism, commodification, exploitation, exclusion, and fundamentally, I think even deeper than that, of disconnectedness, that we learn early on to disconnect the reality that's on our plate every breakfast, lunch, and dinner from the reality that it actually took to get it onto our plate. So we learn early on through practice the art of disconnecting, and we become masters by the time we're 10 or 12 or 15 years old of the art of disconnecting. And so we can be devastating the rainforest, cutting them all down, destroying them, and we just disconnect and say, well, it's not really happening. And the oceans are being destroyed, and we disconnect from that. And so I think at the core of this whole fundamental cultural taboo that we're talking about here today is a mentality that our culture yearns at its very soul and core to transcend, to evolve out of. I think that we know at a deep level that our purpose on this planet is to grow and to awaken and to be living blessings in the world, that we're here literally to bless the world and to discover our own unique way of being that blessing. And so this, I think, is really the challenge that we're faced as a culture, and why the greatest thing anyone can do is to become a vegan, because being a vegan is simply taking responsibility for the ripples that radiate from my life into the world, and it's a mentality of radical inclusion. It's saying I am going to include all living beings within the sphere of my compassion. And so it's fundamentally an extremely healing and life-affirming attitude, but it's not more than an attitude, it's actually living it. You can't be a vegan in theory only. It's practical. And that's why I love it so much, is that it's something we actually live and do. And I think on the outside, most people think of veganism as like you're saying no all the time, right? You're saying, oh, I'm sorry, I don't eat this, I don't eat ice cream, I don't eat eggs, I don't eat cheese, and no. And people go, oh man, you're really negative. You're just saying no to this and no to that. You won't go to the zoo, you won't. But actually, I think it's really important to remember that attitude that seems negative of saying no actually rides on a huge yes, a yes to kindness and compassion and sustainability and freedom and peace and blessing and justice to all living beings. And it's out of that concern that we're basically following a life where we show kindness and compassion to other living beings by refusing to pay our brothers and sisters to do the heartless and brutalizing and demeaning work of killing them. And Martin Luther King said that violence anywhere hurts everyone everywhere. We are all connected. And so I think it's important to remember that if I take out my wallet and I start paying someone to confine a cow or a chicken or to brutalize these animals for food in some way, that I'm actually the one that's responsible for that. I'm paying them to do work that I would never want to do myself. And so underlying this, I think, is really an incredibly positive message that we can transform our culture.
We can go all out and spread the news through internet, through flyers, through media, through television, and through word of mouth. We can offer them all the information that is very up to date now about the climate change and the solution. And right now the only solution, the best, the fastest, and the most effective is the vegetarian diet.